Hey, let's now talk. You had a big weekend. We talked about you going to see 5 games. The one that I think everybody kind of had their eyes on was that American Heritage Los Alamitos game, star-studded game. We've talked about Brandon Innes. We've talked about Mark Fletcher. We kind of thought this game was going to be a really good measuring stick for one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and that's USC commit Malachi Nelson, Makai Lemon as well. The list goes on and on. But you kind of came into the game thinking, okay, Malachi Nelson, Brandon Innes, those are going to be the two guys that I'm going to focus on. And Drew, you kind of came away. Mark Fletcher ran for over 200 yards. The Buckeyes commit another guy, Damari Brown, that we just talked about, had an INT and played well. And Makai Lemon was a guy that certainly made an impact on this game. I just want to get your impressions and your biggest takeaways from one of the biggest games this weekend.
Well, I think you can go in a ton of different directions here. But if we're talking big picture, 10,000-foot view, for me, everyone talks about Ohio State's receivers, Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, Bryson Rogers, Noah Rogers, and then he's got Jelani Thurman, all headed to Columbus. We keep talking about this passing attack, and Dylan Raiola is coming. To me, Mark Fletcher kind of waved his hand and said, hey, guys, I'm a powerful running back that on a big stage can take over a game. He goes for over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. I know he had the 73-yard run where he got caught from behind. I think he actually tweeted out that he cramped up. I mean, I don't care what it is. To me, I saw a Big Ten running back that other people didn't want to tackle. So I don't think we've talked enough about Mark Fletcher. He has dealt with some injuries. He's never tested anywhere. He's never camped anywhere. So I think some people like to have some concerns about his testing profile, the whole answers. But to me, from what I've seen, there are shades of Derrick Henry in his game, and I think he's a very solid addition for the Buckeyes in that recruiting class. He's a guy that on third down, if you need 3 yards, he's probably going to get you 4 or 5. And I think that's certainly notable in this era of football.
Tough assignment for Los Alamitos defense. He was a very tough ball carrier to bring down. But another guy kind of stole the show, even in the loss column, was Makai Lemon. And Drew, I know there's been a lot of conversation back and forth. Is he going to be a receiver? Is he going to be a cornerback? He's currently a guy that we have listed as an athlete, but this is a guy that balled out, man. He went over 200 yards receiving. He had 17 receptions. He also had a 97-yard kickoff return touchdown and a 65-yard touchdown reception called back on penalties. So you think about the sum of what he could have put together that day on an already fabulous day. What'd you like about Makai Lemon?
I'm going to be straight up honest. I've kind of questioned Makai Lemon and where we've had him ranked. I've had some exposure points to him, saw him play 7-on-7 back at the Battle Miami tournament in January. Obviously saw him out at OT7, and there was never really one moment where I was like, wow, this is a dude. I'm changing my tone when it comes to Makai Lemon after seeing him against American Heritage. You rattled off all the numbers. To me, he was just so consistent in his body control. I think one of his touchdown catches, it was of the back shoulder variety, where he finds a way to get his toe down and twist and get into the end zone. This is a baller. This is a dude. He also played some defensive back. And I am a fan of him. I think when we look, again, big picture, what does this mean for college football? You pair this guy with Zachariah Branch and Jacoby Lane, a big-bodied 4-star wide receiver with elite ball skills who USC just picked up a commitment from on Friday. Man, Lincoln Riley's offense looks pretty dang good for their future in the Big Ten, especially with Malachi Nelson there. So I'm a huge fan of Makai Lemon. Stock up for me, and I was probably one of his biggest doubters in that 24/7 Sports Rankings Council.
So let's stay on USC. I think coming into the week, we wanted to know how Malachi Nelson was going to fare. One of the best quarterbacks in the country, committed to the Trojans in Lincoln Riley. You get to see him go up against a very good American Heritage team. He finishes the day 19 of 33, 213 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an INT. What'd you take away from his performance?
He throws a really pretty football, and mechanically, he's probably one of the best, if not the best, in the 2023 cycle. I want to ask you, because I think I've heard you say something similar along those lines. He faced some adversity. I mean, he was in an early deficit. He had to throw the football. American Heritage doesn't have the best of pass rushes, but they were getting some success. And what I liked about Malachi Nelson is he seemed very calm and collected in the pocket. I like his body movement and patterns. He's always keeping his eyes down the field. So, he didn't win. He threw an interception. But to me, I came away from it thinking this is a guy. This is someone that can throw the football, get it to his playmakers, and I was impressed with him. Nothing really changes. Maybe, again, I've kind of not been a doubter, but I've had some concerns and questions. But I think seeing him move around with the bullets flying, I was super impressed with just how he gets rid of the football and how he finds open windows and gets his players in position to make plays.
56-27, American Heritage wins that game against Los Alamitos. And you said it, I think Malachi Nelson, certainly a guy, I wouldn't say there are question marks. He is so God-given in terms of the natural arm talent. Sometimes he just looks casual back there in the pocket, and I think sometimes you can mistake that for lack of focus at times. But what we saw this weekend, to me, and I'm still finishing up the film in the fourth quarter, but certainly is what we've come to expect from Malachi Nelson, and a very good performance for him in terms of the stat line and the production as well. But Drew, let's jump out now to the West Coast, and one of our favorite players, Jurrion Dickey, the 5-star Jurrion Dickey, top 247 receiver in Oregon commit, one of the best players in the class. He transfers to Menlo Atherton, and they had a heck of a game, 48-34. They come back, they beat Bellarmine, but the stat line for Jurrion Dickey, 6 touches, 160 yards, and I believe he finished with 4 touchdowns. He is a big physical player, and I'm watching that game, and it took probably midway through the first half until they started getting him consistent touches, and that's when it felt like the game turned. But he is a dynamic playmaker, and I think outside of Dante Moore, he's the crown jewel of that Oregon class, and I think a guy that could be a potential program changer for the Ducks.
Yeah, I was kind of going through some Twitter clips. That's what I like to do, is search a kid's name and boots on the ground angles from reporters that are there. And my takeaway was Jurrion looked like the biggest player on the field, and that includes the offensive and the defensive linemen. And he took a quick slant and just turned on the afterburner and pulled away from everyone. He's a special talent. There is no question about that. He was also playing some wildcat quarterback, which I kind of love to see. And his ability to make people miss in that little phone booth and fight for extra yardage is super unique. Absolutely agree with you. That is the early gem of that Oregon recruiting class, and you pair him with Dante Moore, those guys should be able to make some big plays on big stages at some point down the line.
He's a dude, and I expect other teams to come knocking on Jurrion Dickey. We've seen that. Miami's certainly a team. Georgia trying to get in the mix as well. So Dan Lanning is going to have his hands full, but he is worth it. And Jurrion Dickey, if they can keep him in the boat. But Drew, a big upset down in Florida, and it was kind of one, I'm going through the Twitter timeline, not one that I really expected, but Miami Central goes to Bradenton, Florida, and they beat IMG Academy, stunned them 20-14. And we heard a lot of noise about Ruben Bain, top 247 defensive lineman. We even heard that from Danny Ramirez, who was fanboy in the recent movie Top Gun Maverick. Shout out to Danny Ramirez, but he thinks that Ruben Bain should get his 5th star. That's neither here nor there. I want to talk about the game a little bit, and then we'll get into Ruben Bain. But this is not what we expected. We talked about IMG having an SEC type of front seven, and really you talk about their 2 corners as well, Ricks and Ellis Robinson, and then you look at that score, and it's a little perplexing with Miami Central pulling off the upset.
Oh, I think good thing my local doesn't accept action on high school football, or it would have been a bad weekend for your boy. I was on the wrong side of some of these coming into it. But hats off to Miami Central, that coaching staff and their head coach. He brought it up, and I tweeted about this. These kids have been preparing for this moment their entire lives, from 7U in the park to now. They've been prepared to take down Goliath, and they were able to do it. IMG Academy actually lost their starting quarterback, Jaden Bradford, early on in the game. I believe he's got a separated shoulder, dislocated shoulder, did it on a little scramble. And I think that kind of opened the door for the Rockets to take control, and they did. Keon Jennings, FIU quarterback commit. I don't know, Cooper, if you've watched much of this game. He deserves a shout out. 141 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Did a great job of getting away from that IMG defensive line. But this is a huge win. Awesome to see. And Ruben Bain, let's talk about him. 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Cooper, what did you think of his performance? Because I have some thoughts, but Ruben Bain, 29.5 sacks as a junior. This might have been his best game to date, at least from a statistical standpoint.
I'm about a half through right now. And right now that the impact for Ruben Bain individually has been limited, but I think he did his job. I mean, it was more assignment football. But Francis Mauigoa, I mean, I don't want to turn the conversation off of Ruben Bain, but Francis Mauigoa continues to prove that he's arguably the best offensive lineman in all of high school football. But certainly, I think it was that second half where Ruben Bain made that impact. You talk about the 3.5 sacks, the TFLs as well. I mean, we know Ruben Bain and what he brings to the table. I think the biggest question with him in terms of projecting him to the next level is how much meat on the bone does he have left in terms of that athletic projection in upside, developmental upside, in terms of how much weight can he put on. But in terms of what he is right now, I think Ruben Bain has proved time and time again that he's one of the most impactful players in this cycle.
Well, I'm on the same boat as you because I'm about in order. And, you get all these tweets about how we need to make this kid a 5-star. And don't get me wrong, I love Ruben Bain. I know you love Ruben Bain, but I thought I was going to put on the tape and, this guy was just having his way. And then all I see is Francis Mauigoa kind of holding his own. And I think they kind of started moving Ruben to the other side, going up against Jimothy Lewis, who's a very talented 2024 offensive tackle. And this is no discredit to him. I mean, that IMG starting 5 is the best you're going to find in the country. But I think, we're kind of like living on a few plays here. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's talented, but it wasn't some dominating performance against Mauigoa. I thought Mauigoa was excellent in that game.
The tail is in the tape. Typically, that's what they say. A lot of stat boys out there, but that's all right. That's our job to watch the tape, and that's what we do, to refuse that or maybe just get to the bottom of what is what. But, Drew, you had a little bit of a football crush. There was a guy out there, 2024 FSU commit at the quarterback position that you told me a while back. You said, hey, we got to keep an eye on this guy. You got to see him this past weekend. They came up short on the road, but that's Luke Kromenoke, and a guy that you continue to come away impressed with. What'd you like about him this weekend?
So, Luke, this is the third time I've seen him throw. I saw him throw at a camp, Under Armour camp. Then I saw him at FSU Seminole Showcase. And then I circled this game on my calendar, Savannah Benedictine. They came down to Miami to play Miami Columbus, and I needed to see Luke primarily because this was his only second start as a quarterback ever. This is a kid who last year backed up Holden Gerner, who signed with Auburn, was an Elite 11 finalist. Luke was playing safety and wide receiver for his team. He waited his turn, and I think he was awesome. Yeah, his team lost. They were a bit overwhelmed at the point of attack. Luke was running for his life. But to me, what I saw is a guy with a quick release, does an excellent job of getting outside the pocket, keeping plays alive. And he's very, very athletic and hard to get to the ground. There's a few clips I posted on my Instagram where he's getting out of tackles. Someone tries to hit him late out of bounds. That guy bounces off of him. But we've wondered, what is Florida State doing at quarterback? I think the answer is they really, really like the guy they have committed in the class of 2024. And we have a mid 3-star grade on him. I mean, I remember when I had to grade him, I was so pissed off because there's not much tape to grade on him. And I think he's a guy that's going to climb in our rankings. And I had a hunch that he was the real deal when he started getting some offers back in June. I know he threw for Billy Napier and the Gators, left Gainesville with an offer, but stock up, red arrow for me on Luke Kromenoke.
Yeah, he made some impressive throws. I know the clip that I sent you before the show, him rolling out, throwing a dot about 50 yards across his body, takes the hit, touchdown in the first half of that game. So he's done some impressive things, I think, physically as well. There's a lot of upside to work with. So if you're Florida State, credit to those guys on the early ID there. And Luke Kromenoke, it looks like that one's going to pan out. We'll keep an eye on him. But, Drew, a couple other games on the West Coast we're not going to be able to dive into, but they definitely should serve notice. I mean, you look at this Bishop Gorman Mater Dei game, and this is one we kind of had circled. That one, 24-21, Mater Dei comes back. We'll get into that hopefully on Wednesday a little bit more, but that was a physical game. I'm about 3/4 through that one. I'm all over the place right now trying to watch as many games as possible. St. John Bosco and St. John Bosco and Allen, Texas. I mean, you got that one circled, and that is 52-14. St. John Bosco wins that game in Allen, Texas. I mean, West Coast football, we talk about it a lot. Give those guys a lot of credit. Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. Obviously, you got Mater Dei in Santa Ana. You got St. John Bosco right there as well. So they're flexing right there against some of the better teams in the country.